world surrounded by franchises, reboots, and shared universes. An elite team of podcasters will risk body and soul to investigate the depths of intellectual properties, one multiverse, subgenre, and trend at a time. Who are we? We're the IP Squad. Welcome back to the IP Squad on our ongoing investigation into the Alien and Predator franchises and the franchise they became together. I'm John Campbell. My partner for this investigation, Mike Ergoni.
I'm kind of a stranger to this franchise, John. It's all new to me because I am Mike Ergoni number 14. Ignore the room that says 1 through 13.
Yeah, that's right. We forgot. Gergoni actually, after the last episode, did throw himself into a fiery, molten pit, and we've had to clone him. We've had some trouble in the last week, but I think we've got it now. But you're remembering things, Gergoni.
It's true, I am, and so is this franchise, I guess.
Oh, man. Okay, I hadn't seen 3 or 4 in a long time. And my memory was I hated 3 and I thought 4 was okay. My stance is I still hate 3 and I think 4 is nothing. Like just 4? So inconsistent. It's so harmless, but also makes almost no impact on me.
So yes, today we're talking about 1997's Alien Resurrection.
Alien Resurrection. Because we just can't stop.
We can't stop. Won't stop. Something compels us. Some deep, terrible urge.
Yeah.
This movie, to me, is a straight-to-video movie that somehow escaped into theaters.
Oh, perfect description. Absolutely perfect. That's what it is. It's a real, like, I don't know, we just got, this is a thing, this is popular. How do we create another one of these?
There are, I shouldn't say there were because they keep making them, a series of Starship Troopers sequels.
Oh, yeah. By the way, definitely a future IP Squad season.
Oh, yeah, 100%. But eventually they get Casper Van Dien back because his career craters.
Oh, yeah. It turns out he lacks, what's that word? Charisma.
So this movie feels like, what if Sigourney Weaver's career just had completely bottomed out? Which, to be clear, at this point in 1997, it had not.
No.
And it would not.
She's very open in the quotes about this movie that they paid her a fucking fortune for this thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually have how much they paid her because her paycheck for this movie is the same amount of money the first Alien cost.
That's amazing. But if you watch this movie completely devoid of any like background information or context, and you have not seen anything else that Sigourney Weaver has been in over the last 26 years, you would have thought that her career had completely stalled out and she made this like direct to TV or direct to video sequel to Alien just for the paycheck. And somehow they got Winona Ryder when she was not yet as hot as she could be. But again, she's also like having a very pretty good career as of 1997.
Yeah, it was like a big deal that they got Winona Ryder in this movie. And also, it makes me sad that Winona Ryder was like psyched to be in this. Because she was just like, I love those movies.
And every other cast member of this film is, oh yeah, they'd show up in a TV movie and probably have multiple times.
Well, the rest of this cast are people who would be in either the big budget tentpole movie or the straight to video movie. They go back and a Ron Perlman, that guy's all over the place.
Yeah, Brad Dourif, he's
they'll be in big studio things, and
the work because they just got to work. I think I told this story on here before about somebody talked about running into Ron Perlman when he was shooting one of the Uwe Boll. They're like, "What are you doing here in Bulgaria?" He's like, "I'm shooting this Uwe Boll video game movie." And they're like, "Jesus, why, Ron?" And he said, "Because my wife likes shoes."
Yeah. I just heard him on a podcast recently. I don't. It was like a politics podcast, and he was just commenting on
that
some
guy's
stuff.
that guy's got thoughts about politics, no question.
He's got thoughts.
Yeah,
but he got a question that was just like, "You're known for like putting on a lot of makeup," and he's like, "Yeah, they got to pay somebody for it. Might as well be me."
Yeah, he is a real. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I will say. One of the saving graces of this movie is that everybody here is a very good actor. Like
it elevates this movie in a way it has no right to, considering some of the stuff that is both said and actions that are participated in this movie.
The only reason I have any affinity for these characters is the actors playing them. They are not particularly good characters, but they cast a lot of people who have charm and personality. But I will say, particularly Ron Perlman, and one of the reasons I do love Ron Perlman is just Ron Perlman as he is like a blue collar actor. I go to work, and I've seen in those Uwe Boll movies. Listen to us talk about Blood Rain over on Meet the Monsters. He's fucking good. He's always good. The man has never phoned it in. He's a pro.
I think the same could be said for basically all the leads of this film, honestly.
Yeah.
Like,
everybody in this...
on the cast list, everyone here is doing the work.
Yep. I mean, and these are all people, aside from Dominique Pinion, who both of us think we've seen in more stuff than we have. He's a regular of... well, that'll lead us into Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who directed this movie, because he's a regular of his movies. So he's
also like, does a lot of French film.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, guys like, man, when I was a kid, Michael Wincott was in every movie I watched.
Yeah. Or like, frickin' Dan Hedaya is so recognizable as like, wait, was he the commander in Stargate SG-1? No. Different guy. But you could think he was.
Well, he's Nick Portello from Cheers to me. So I mean, that's a bit.
He's also that, yeah.
Yeah, that's a big thing for me. And I did think that. I'm like, I'm supposed to believe that Carla's shitty ex-husband is this military commander? Okay.
Look, eventually, Beau Bridges took over.
I'm sorry, Nick
SG-1.
Portello. I just confused Golden Girls and Nick Tortelli. And the brief, very ill-advised, the Tortellis spinoff that lasted 13 episodes. They shouldn't have done that.
And you've also got Leland Orser, who's just played a like wide-eyed psychopath in a dozen things.
Leland Orser is in so many things, and still is in so many things. He is one of those guys.
Is he in all the Taken movies? He is in all the Taken movies.
Yeah, he's Liam Neeson's best friend and former spy partner in the Taken movies. Yep.
Yeah.
He's always... Well, that was a sweet gig, because he pretty much just shows up at the beginning and end of each of those to be like, who got taken now, Liam? Oh, no. Here's your go bag. You know, because like, he never went on the missions or anything in those movies. He was always just going like, yeah, let me know. Call me on the sat phone mid-mission if you need me to look something up.
Yeah, and just like in all the TV shows of the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, I primarily know him from he was on ER for a while.
His highlight role as crazed man in massage parlor in 7.
Yes. Oh, he actually is quite memorable in that. If you remember what happened to him in 7. Yeesh.
I was only half joking.
No, it's actually for a non-named character, it's pretty memorable. And then we've got Raymond Cruz, who's been in everything as well.
Totally. And he's like effectively nameless soldier number 3 who just like by process of elimination kind of becomes a main character.
He was that in a lot of movies. I remember him he's in so many 90s action movies as one of the guys on the SEAL team. Mm-hmm. Whether that's Clear and Present Danger or Under Siege or what, it's like He's the guy on the team. And then he would go on to be on The Closer was the big thing he was on.
But yeah, just like top to bottom, we've got a stack of people who you could recognize.
And they're all pros. They've all shown up to do the work. It's just, I mean, similar. 3 and 4 suffer from similar problems. This one makes me less angry than 3 does. But this is another one where it's just like, we don't really know what this movie is.
Well, no, they do. And the unfortunate part of it all is that what they know is that there's a little stinker named Joss Whedon who has written a Saturday morning cartoon of the Alien franchise, and they turned it into a movie.
Well, it's a very interesting thing because Whedon... and we don't need to. I mean, I don't want to get into Whedon and his current, stuff. It doesn't matter anyway. This is Joss Whedon.
I mean, there's a little bit, but
but for the context of this movie, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
The discussion of this movie. Yeah. Whedon, though, especially at this point,
not a great guy. You can go look it up and read it yourself.
Yeah. But none of that. There's nothing from this movie specifically that anybody brought up. But it's interesting. He was really upset about how this movie turned out. But as he talks about tonally, he was upset about how it turned out because he's like, oh no, because for a long time there's like, well, if we read Joss Whedon's script, I bet it's brilliant. And then people read his script and were like, oh, it's all the lines that are in the movie. He's like, yeah, but the tone's wrong. He wanted it to be funnier. And I'm like, that's not the tone it should have, though.
Well, and that's sort of the...
Mine was more tongue-in-cheek.
What you're butting up against and what I find endearing about this movie is that there are so many like throwaway, zippy one-liners that do not fit the context of what's actually going on.
Right.
And they're all coming from Ron Perlman.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he basically... And it's interesting that I think Whedon... In one of the things that one of the research materials I was looking at for this talked about, he goes, oh, I didn't really think about the similarities to Firefly until years later when someone pointed out. I'm like, really? Because you basically have the Firefly cast show up in an Alien movie. Like they're scrappy, dirty space outlaws that end up in an Alien movie.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of map the entire crew of Firefly onto the crew of the Betty from this movie.
He goes, oh, I'd never really thought about it. I'm like, well, then you're not very smart.
Because Ron Perlman is definitely our Jane.
Mm-hmm.
We have Gary Dourdan's Christie is sort of our like he's kind of a combination of like Mal and Jane as well. I mean, they've all basically got like a little Jane in them.
I mean, they're not one-to-one with the characters because they don't really have a pure Mal. Like they don't have like a hero. I mean, Ripley becomes the de facto Mal, I guess, because she ends up. Though Ripley's a whole bag of worms in this movie that we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, I just think it's very interesting that like this is one where it's like I think they were just off from the beginning. This was just, and also I think this movie really, truly, this movie would have been better without Ripley.
Well, and you can read some of the like original intent of this film.
It wasn't supposed to be a Ripley movie, yeah.
It wasn't supposed to be Ripley, yeah. That was not necessarily a last-minute decision, but definitely a decision made by producers once they enticed Sigourney Weaver with a dump truck full of money.
We didn't talk because I did watch once again on YouTube. I found in the idea that every movie has its fans and every movie is somebody's favorite movie. There's an entire YouTube channel devoted just to things about Alien Resurrection, all the TV spots, all the deleted scenes. Someone has collected all of those into an Alien Resurrection specific YouTube channel, which was good for me on this show because I once again found the making of documentary that I watched on this. And Joss Whedon talked about that it was like he wrote a 30-page treatment for his version would have had a cloned Newt being this character.
Sure. That lets you basically recast it without detaching it from the franchise.
Right. And Fox is like, we love this. It has to be Ripley.
Mm-hmm.
So go back, write this thing, but with Ripley. And so he had to basically rework the whole thing to be about Ripley. Because it's a very interesting and very not the attitude now. Because now it is like IP drives everything. Stars don't mean anything. But back then they were just going, people won't go see this if it's not Sigourney.
Which, I mean, I don't know. Maybe the future of the Alien franchise has sort of proved that maybe they're right.
Yeah, I mean, I believe I've said my if they want to get me back in the theater, they'd have to get Sigourney back, or else I really don't care. I've been burned too many times by this franchise. But I do think it's an interesting attitude that particularly in the 90s it was like, well, Alien, that's Sigourney Weaver's franchise. Whereas now we're like, no, just the name Alien, they think they can make a movie.
Right. And to a greater and lesser extent, they're correct.
They can make a movie. Yeah, agreed.
Yes. And Ridley Scott has twice gone, well, I can just make a movie on my own.
You know what I love in doing all the research about these movies? Every time they make one of these sequels, in the background is Ridley Scott going, I'd like to make a movie about the origin of the aliens. So he was always trying to get Prometheus made, basically. Every time they came to him, he goes, no, thank you, not interested in a sequel. What about the origin of the species? And they're like, well, I don't know, Ridley, if that's what people want. So eventually he always, just keep in mind when we get to Prometheus, he always had that idea. They just got desperate enough to greenlight it.
So this movie feels to me, like I said, like a straight-to-video movie that sort of escaped into theaters.
Yeah.
And
it kind of looks like one, too. It's not a great-looking movie. Like the one.
Well, that's not necessarily this movie's fault. This movie is being made in 1996, 1997's fault.
No, it looks like a lot of sci-fi stuff from this era.
Yeah, like, very few movies are going to attain the, like, semi-timeless quality of Jurassic Park, right?
Right, yeah.
Every other movie of this era looks more like this than anything else.
I would say even Lost World looks more like this. I mean, even the second Jurassic Park looks a little grimier.
Not even grimier, but just like the CG stands out a little bit more.
Well, I'm just talking about even like the lighting choices and this movie. Off mention on the show, Roger Ebert fucking hated this movie. And one of the reasons he talks about it, he goes like, there's nothing interesting. All of the sets are just like dark metal. You know, there's none of the, because like, as bad as Alien 3 is, the sets are fucking great. And there's some interesting ideas in some of the design in it. Here, everything is just blah.
The one interesting set piece is the underwater kitchen, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's the only interest, because if a lot of this movie felt to me like truly that like fourth movie in a franchise thing where they're like, what have we not aliens underwater? Yeah. Yeah. Sure. And it is the thing that stands out the most, and it is what I definitely it is the image I remember most from this movie is the aliens underwater, because you're like, oh yeah, you're right, I haven't seen that. Does it matter? No.
The image you don't remember most from this movie isn't the weird goo baby in the last section of the film?
I mean, I try to forget the goo baby because it's one of the dumbest looking things. That's another thing, too. Creature design is shit in this movie.
I disagree.
You think so? You like the goo baby?
I think the hybrid is flawed in a lot of ways.
Yes.
But in terms of just like for the Alien franchise,
yeah.
I think it's bad, but it's just like something you might see in Dead Space or like some other sci-fi horror franchise. I kind of like the creature design and how it can flip from this like weird, like kind of innocent look to vicious on a dime. I think it's some pretty good animatronics and puppet work there.
I don't know. I thought all of his expressions were so weird, and I found it very off-putting and unintentionally silly.
I mean, off-putting is definitely on purpose, though, right?
Well, no, but I mean, let me say, maybe not in the right way off-putting, though. Or at least, I don't know. For me, I found it more laughable than scary. I was like, what the fuck is this thing?
Well, and it doesn't help the way they're cutting around it a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You read about how this creature was designed in some ways, and the studio notes were like, no, too gross, too weird, in terms of it having basically human genitalia kind of fused into its belly.
Yeah.
and everyone the studio level is just like, no.
Yeah.
We basically have to cut around this monster now, so we don't show that. There's one shot where you can see it. But other than that, there's just like a lot of like
that whole final sequence is so choppy and like whoa.
Yeah.
And poor Brad Dourif having to just be encased in goo and yelling shit.
That is maybe my favorite part of the movie is so Brad Dourif has made a career out of being just a weird little guy. That's like his whole deal.
Oh, he's cornered the market on it.
Yeah.
He's kind of the modern generation's Peter Lorre, right? Of just like, oh, you need a weird beady-eyed little guy to be like, yeah.
Exactly. And that's his whole deal in the movie. So like when you get to the buildup of him getting like jerked down on the bottom of the frame at like the beginning of Act 2 of this film, you're like, oh no, Brad Dourif, he was a weird little guy, and it was like making out with glass in front of the alien.
I mean,
and like
once again, I don't know how much that's like good, but it's some of the most entertaining stuff because Dourif, man, the man is compelling as hell.
Right. So when he comes back in Act 3, like strung up in the hive, and is just monologuing for no reason,
it's just like, God, Brad Dourif's gonna make this movie work by himself, and he's just gonna.
Yeah,
that's right, Ripley. And I'm just like, oh, so he's just a full-on cartoon character. Great.
It's all for you, Ripley. It's all for you. Your gift to the Queen.
Yeah. Holy shit. I mean, once again, everybody here is doing the work. Nobody's phoning it in. But I will say, Sigourney Weaver does not talk in the documentary when they made the documentary that they put out, but they have archival interviews of her on the set of this in her costume. And I'm just watching her going, bullshit. Because she's just going like, well, I didn't want to come back. Then I read this script, and it blew me away. I'm like, no, I think a paycheck blew you away, Sigourney. We know that.
She's on set while producers are watching.
Yeah. Just her going like, I just thought this script was like, no, it's not. I mean, like the last one, there are some ideas in here that are interesting. But it's pretty... this is not a good piece of writing. This is a weaker Whedon script.
Sure. The interesting beat that they're trying to drive home in this film is this idea that, okay, Ripley was destroyed by the evil she was been fighting for 3 movies. And now it's a part of her as she's being resurrected. And like the central question of her character in this film is she going to be subsumed by it? Is she already like a part of it in some way? Is there any redemption for this person who's maybe not even quite all the way human anymore?
Right. And I get where, once again, on paper, when you say that sounds like, ooh, juicy, meaty material for an actor. But
yeah,
it didn't land with me.
Well,
I see it's what they're doing.
When we're initially introduced to her in the beginning of Act 3, once she meets up with the crew of the Betty, when everything has hit the fan,
right?
Her first action we see of her is blowing the head off of a xenomorph. So it immediately undercuts any like question we might have about whether or not she's actually siding with the aliens or not.
Right. Because that's meant to be the thing about, like, what do you even want? What are you? Are you one of them, or are you one of... I mean, Winona Ryder goes and tries to murder her, early in the movie, because it's like either to stop the madness for them, or, as she eventually says to her, I can release you from this hell you're in. The Winona Ryder character is a real mess to me. No, not Winona Ryder's doing the best she can with what she's been given.
Well, I want to unpack this for a second, and also maybe you can answer a question for me.
Yeah.
Is there another cut of this film out there?
No.
Okay.
There's a lot that got cut out of this movie, but I don't believe they've ever actually released another cut. But there is a ton that got cut out.
I Bernstein bears myself into thinking that she had like different backstory and or motivation in this film than what we're actually given. Having rewatched it this morning, all we really get is this like really flimsy one sentence thing of, well, I read some government files and that convinced me that I needed to put a stop to this. And she's working as like a rogue, just independent agent. And for some reason I had it in my head that she was some part of like larger anti-government resistance. That's just me making things up now.
Yeah, I think because I'm looking even at the I'm looking at what got deleted, and none of that is what I don't see any of that in there even. So I think you might have just made that up.
That's fair. Well, I mean,
that sounds more interesting actually.
Maybe, because again, all that we're given for motivation and like the whole reason she's even here aboard the crew of the Betty is to, by chance, make it to this ship that is doing research on xenomorphs. That, again, by chance, she runs into Ripley and she wants to like end her suffering. But her real mission here is to stop the xenomorphs from getting out. And her motivations where that is concerned is because am good guy and alien bad.
And secret robot, which I feel like I don't know why that mattered at all.
I mean, it gives us that cool scene where she's hooked up and is the voice of the
ship.
I will eventually make its way into Firefly.
Yeah, yes. But also like it just felt like another thing. And it also happens way later in the movie than I had remembered. And then they get into this whole thing about like, oh, you're one of these kind of robots. You're a machine built by machines. And I'm like, whoa. You don't have time to get into that sci-fi concept in this movie. That's a whole other movie you just described.
Yeah, there's this background theme in the Alien franchise about artificial people, right? And like the Prometheus movies explore this a lot more. And
very much so.
I'm not going to spoil Romulus for you, John, but like that, of course, digs into it some more as well.
Well, I mean, I know robots are an unresistible, it's going to be, from what I gather, the main bulk of what the Alien TV show is going to be about, more about the androids than it is even about the aliens.
So the idea of the androids we've seen in the Alien franchise up to this point, like creating a successor to themselves is interesting. And like we get little bits and pieces of like really interesting stuff from Winona Ryder in this script of just like, oh, she doesn't like doing the machine interface stuff because it makes her stop feeling real. So there's this whole like subtext.
This is what I'm saying, where it's like, if you
reaching for humanity.
This is where I'm saying, like, just take Ripley out of this movie. The Winona Ryder character is actually interesting, but she's sidelined by the movie and also sidelined by the need to make it a third act reveal that she's a robot.
Yeah.
And so you can't really get into... And so that's why I'm saying, I'm like, I don't think this character is well served. I think Winona Ryder obviously showed up game to play this, but then just... I don't know how you... And it doesn't... I don't know what the intention was, whether they were trying to set her up to be... Was this a passing of the torch movie? Were they thinking about making Alien 5 with Winona Ryder? I don't know.
I mean, they were definitely thinking about making an Alien 5.
Of course.
Some of the background details we have about the creation of this, like, leads us to believe, well, already, like, the teaser for this movie came out and we were promised aliens on Earth. Obviously, that doesn't happen in this film.
Did you watch the alternate? Have you seen the alternate ending to this movie?
No, I have not.
Once again, thanks to whoever's running that Alien Resurrection channel, I watched the alternate ending of this movie, which is basically the same last scene, except they're not on a ship. They have landed on Earth, and they have that conversation, Ripley and Call, which is Winona Ryder's character, but they're looking out over a completely decimated Paris, where the Eiffel Tower is like bent and destroyed and fallen over. So it's basically the same thing, except they're on some sort of post-apocalyptic Earth.
I mean, Ron Perlman does say that Earth is a shithole.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that felt a little bit more sequel-y set up, where it's like, not only are we going to Earth, but we get a little taste of what Earth is like, and that's where we're going to be now. For the next movie. Of course. So I mean, it's not the alternate ending isn't that exciting, but
Yeah.
There it is. You can watch it.
This movie also divorces itself from some key like features of the Alien franchise, and that includes the whole like Weyland-Yutani super corporation thing.
I thought that was a weird choice to be like, Weyland-Yutani. They don't exist anymore. You're like,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, they're freeing themselves up to do basically whatever they want, right?
Yeah.
By setting it 200 years in the future, post Alien 3.
Yeah, but by doing that, as we were talking about a little bit with the last episode, it's sort of like, well, then as a franchise, this is weird because you don't really get a satisfying conclusion. I guess they're arguing that like, oh, Ripley defeated them in the end to a certain extent, and that ultimately enough time passed that they. I mean, what I would have loved. And look, I try not to do this on these shows, but I end up doing it. So I'm not even going to say anymore. Trying to fix these movies. What would have been really interesting is if instead of it being a military thing, the thing that has Ripley is like, oh, we're actually the fifth company that bought the previous company that, was Weyland-Yutani. If you just kept the corporate nightmare going and it was like merger after merger after merger over 200 years and it's still just megacorp. I don't know. That would have at least, I feel like, been playing in the threads of the original movie, but they want to get away from that for reasons that are fine. But it just, I don't know. I lost some level of attachment to the franchise when they're just like, Weyland-Yutani's not a thing.
Well, John, because it's the late 90s and distrust of large corporations is at a lull at this period.
This is true.
We're moving into distrust of the government territory as of the 90s.
Well, and
of course,
actually,
99 being some of the peaks of that.
That's fine, except for the government is so ill-defined in this movie.
They're the United Marine Space Corps people.
Another option would be to do the like RoboCop thing where it's like the government, a division of Weyland-Yutani.
Yeah, that would be funny.
That I feel like.
But I think that's more satirical than Alien wants to be.
Yeah, that would be more satirical, but just the idea about like, for sure there's this anti-corporate movement, and then here it becomes sort of a pseudo anti-government movement, but the government is just a big spaceship and vaguely military. I don't know. I feel like they didn't figure out this world of 200 years in the future too well.
No, absolutely not. Because we're also presented with a future in which like space travel has changed enough that in the Alien franchise up to this point, space travel is arduous and hard,
right.
and you have to be in cryo sleep to get it done. In this, we go from an uncharted territory where like a military black site can exist to getting to Earth in 3 hours.
Yeah. I feel like they have, by advancing it 200 years, they have basically just caught it up to being every other space thing, right?
Yeah.
Star Trek, Star Wars. I mean, like, it's just, all of a sudden a lot of the, I think that's a big thing too when I'm talking about the design. By moving it forward, we lose a lot. Like, nothing in this movie really looks like the other Alien movies. Like the weapons, the space suits, there's nothing that feels like it's of the world of Alien, which I guess was by design by moving it 200 years. But then, once again, to get back to looking at this as a franchise, then why are you doing why is it Alien then?
Yeah, it reads as we couldn't necessarily afford the same production value. And I know this movie cost more than all the other films.
Oh yeah. It's this isn't they don't not have money, but that's not really the same thing as production value. But it reads
like
right?
we couldn't replicate the props or the set design of previous films. Now, I think there are a couple of exceptions to that. What little we see of the alien hive matter looks, I think, really, really good.
Oh, I agree. That I think is the best looking stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like, speaking of stuff that they didn't. The
spaceships look different. The weapons all look different.
Yeah. Yeah. It just, by the way, Giger was super pissed about this movie
because he wasn't consulted at all.
Because he wasn't credited.
Right.
Nor was he credited for the designs. He was like, "What the fuck, man? That's a bunch of Giger shit in there. Where's Giger's name on this?"
I will say one of my favorite shots in the movie is when Ripley gets like sucked down through the floor and she lands on like the weird like alien mattress.
Yeah.
And she like gives herself into it. It's upsetting and weird, and I think is very fitting with the franchise, but is sort of sits in isolation to the rest of the movie.
Well, because I mean, let's talk about Ripley in this movie. She's not Ripley, right? I mean, that inherently she's just not by design.
She's
so
Ripley 8.
yeah, so it's a really interesting idea about like, if we do another Alien, we got to put Sigourney in it. And they're like, but she died. They're like, it doesn't matter. Sigourney needs to be in it. It doesn't have to be that Ripley. You know what I mean? That's the thing where it's just like, we got to find a way to get Sigourney in. And even Whedon in the documentary, in his very flip Joss Whedon manner, is like, well, I explored a number of things, and I finally thought, I just got to clone her.
Yeah, and I think there is, like you say, with Winona Ryder's character, there is a lot of interesting things to explore with a clone of Ellen Ripley, who is now also sort of part alien.
Yeah, well, because now she's got superpowers, is basically how it plays in the movie to me.
Yeah, she gets some super strength, she's got some acid blood, and she can, like, sense alien stuff when the plot needs her to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and a lot of that stuff, you just go like, okay, well, that's fine, and I understand what you've built in the story, but that's pretty far away from the Ellen Ripley we love. So it's
again, I think there's an interesting concept in this self-conflict of I am become part of the thing I died trying to kill, but her like trying to grapple with that, but there isn't a lot of grappling in this movie.
No, that's the thing, is this movie doesn't really have interest in that because it's also the zippiest, funniest, most fun. I mean, is this movie scary?
No, it's scary in the same way that like a horror like roller coaster is scary.
Yeah, because I was gonna say this movie is so much more just like, but bing bang boom, yeah, we're doing. You know, it is real popcorn entertainment in a way that like there's still real terror in even the fun of Cameron's Aliens.
Well, and even in Alien 3, you have this kind of isolating feeling. And in theory, this movie should have kind of a similar tone, considering we are in like a segmented ship away from everybody else. We're in this like very controlled, isolated military science environment.
Yeah.
And it should feel like cramped and confined and sterile. But instead, it feels kind of cheap and flimsy, and how many people are on this spaceship never really matters.
Well, that speaks to the design thing as well that, like I said, that Ebert mentioned. I think when you talk about it, it all feels, you don't get a sense of, because every place looks the same. So you never really get a sense of how big or small this place is, because you're like, you're in a different place, but it kind of looks like that other hallway. It's just a lot of metal grating and low light, real dark sort of color. I mean, like I said, a lot of stuff from this era looks like this, but I think they came out, if not the same year, real close. Plug for our Patreon page where we'll be talking about this movie. Event Horizon is a better looking movie that's in the same milieu as this, that came out around the same time. But I think Event Horizon is better designed. And actually, of course, very scary. Yes, 97. They came out the same year.
One of the key things with any like movie that builds tension is a sense of place, right?
Yeah.
Geography is so important in a movie that's trying to instill tension, whether that be the full extent to horror or some kind of like jump scare, whatever. You have to know where things are in your head.
I mean, that was something we really praised about the first movie in particular. Ridley Scott takes so much time to give you the Nostromo's layout so well in that movie.
Whereas this movie, we know in Act 3 the goal is to get out and get to the Betty, the like smaller ship. Where that is in context to anything else, no idea.
Yeah, it's weird that there's not a classic sort of sci-fi moment of like, we are here, we need to get here, you know?
Yeah, you expect them to go up to like a schematic and be like, all right, where are we? And that's even a thing from Aliens.
I was just going to say.
Here's the complex. Here we are. We got to cut off this bulkhead, this bulkhead, this bulkhead. And that isolates us.
Like, that seems like, well, okay, here's where the movie's stopping to do that. But then you realize when you don't see that, how fucking important moments like that in movies are. I mean, you think about even outside of something like Die Hard, right? Where it's like, okay, he does have at one point, he's looking at the blueprints of the building. Stuff like that, where it's just like, oh yeah, the contained environments. You've got to get from this floor to this floor, this deck to this deck or whatever. Here, yeah, it just sort of feels like the Betty is vaguely over there and we're kind of over here.
And we know that there are intersectional bits that we have to pass through to get there.
Yeah.
But they feel more like weird set pieces divorced of each other than actual, like, a serpentine labyrinth of a spaceship, right? Because we get to that trench that is then full of water. That leads to the underwater scene, which leads to the alien hive, which leads to a weird catwalk going up forever, which leads to a church.
Yeah, because why not? I mean, like I said, it really felt like, as a script, they were just like, we want a scene where they're underwater. We want a scene with the hive. We want a scene where they're climbing on ladders. We want a scene in a church.
Yeah.
And just put those through. Just whatever gets us from... Yeah, this feels the most like we had a bunch of ideas for set pieces, and we sort of came up with a loose thread to make it. And you're like, yeah, that really hasn't been what the movies have been up to this point. Or at least if they are, they've been well hidden. Even the third one, as much as I bitch about stuff, and I still think this one is more watchable than 3, because 3 is just such a bummer. This movie's kind of dumb.
Oh, this movie is super dumb.
Yeah.
The characters make dumb decisions. Like, when the captain just, like, straight up leaves the rest of his crew to go wandering down a hallway for no particular reason, only to get murked by a xenomorph. You're just like, this is just a
by the
horror
way,
movie character.
Wincott really gets done dirty in this movie. What a waste.
Oh yeah, because I mean, the movie literally stops as he like falls behind everyone fleeing towards the Betty, and then he's looking down a hallway. The shot does not indicate what is drawing his attention, other than he's looking that way because the camera is.
Right. Can I talk about, there's a world where once again you talk about, could you imagine? There is, they did go to Cronenberg for this movie.
Ooh. And see, oh God, what does the hybrid look like with Cronenberg at the helm? Boy, howdy.
Yeah. But yeah, he basically was just like, that's too many moving pieces and too much money. You're gonna be on my ass. Like, I think it's sort of what he was just like. He goes, he just said, he said he was briefly interested and thought about what an Alien 4 would be, and then went, actually, that doesn't sound fun at all. And fair. They don't want somebody coming in with a incredible singular vision, because like Cronenberg, especially, I mean, at this point he was already Cronenberg, right? So he's already an auteur. So they want. Let's talk about who they got, because who they got on this movie is the weirdest fucking choice, weirder than Fincher. They got Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who I mentioned earlier, who is...
This is maybe... him directing this movie is maybe the greatest piece of like bar trivia you might run across.
Yeah. Because there is nothing else in his entire filmography that is remotely like this. This is the only American film he ever made to this date. I believe he's openly stated he will never make another movie here after this experience. But yeah, he's coming off of the sort of back-to-back foreign, festival successes of Delicatessen and City of Lost Children. And City of Lost Children is vaguely science fiction, but not like this,
It's soft science fiction where it's like, okay, there's some science fiction premises that allow the plot to function.
Right. It does have Ron Perlman in it, which is obviously then how he got into this. Ron Perlman, by the way, once again, Also, another thing he'll do is go act in foreign films. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean,
and at this point, he's coming off of Beauty and the Beast, right?
That was a few years before this, but yeah. Yeah, because that was like late 80s into the early 90s. But yeah. But he's already worked with Guillermo del Toro on Kronos at this point. And so, I mean, real smart for his career that he also worked with these like foreign auteurs who have continued putting him in stuff.
Totally.
He's popular with, but then so they once again, and they're like, because they always are going like, well, Ridley Scott was actually kind of an unconventional choice. It's just they lucked out with Ridley Scott on the first movie, right? And that like, oh, they did get like an artsy filmmaker who actually does have like a commercial instinct to him.
Literally, in the case of Ridley
Scott,
Scott,
I mean, actually, it'd come from commercials, but like, yeah, like a guy with an artsy eye, but a mind towards blockbusters. Sure. And then they had maybe the ultimate blockbuster filmmaker in James Cameron, and then they got a guy who, Fincher was just not the guy that they were going to be able to push around that they thought they were going to. And then,
well, Fincher is yet another case where they got an artsy guy, but an artsy guy whose art is meticulous and doesn't gel well with the studio system.
No, a guy who you really he'll make something genius, but you've really got to give him a lot of rope. But he's and then this guy who is once again the movie Genet makes after this is Amelie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think going from Alien Resurrection to Amelie is got to be one of the craziest jumps between movies of any director's career.
It's up there, and when I talk about bar trivia, that's usually what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
somebody will mention what was the movie that was made by the director of Amelie directly beforehand.
Yeah. And he was pretty much like all of his quotes was like, I didn't really want to do it. I just, he didn't speak any English, so he's directing everyone through translators, which is always a great way to work, of course.
Yeah, when you can't understand what your actors are saying in a given scene, you can really hone the precise emotional arcs of your characters.
He and Whedon apparently fucking hated each other and were constantly at odds. I will say, obviously Joss Whedon, as we've talked about, has his problems, but we do not need Genet out there going, he makes movies for the American geek boys, the stupid movies with the people in the tights, and he likes dumb shit, It's like,
that's a classically French attitude, I feel like.
Oh, no. I will say it's not it's an attitude I don't like, but it's not a surprising attitude.
Yeah.
But yeah. And so, yeah, he was just like, it sounds like he kind of took this to be like, hey, what's this all about? Like, let me see. Oh, I don't like this,
Well, and I'm sure a dump truck full of money helped.
I'm sure it did. But unlike Fincher, where it's a constant battle and Fincher has a vision, this guy seems to be more like, I don't know how to do this anyway, so, like...
Well, and this movie feels like it's been propped up by a studio in some ways, in terms of, like, okay, there are certain demands that are being made by studio executives in terms of, well, Sigourney Weaver has to be in it.
Yeah.
Well, Winona Ryder has to be in it.
Right.
Well, we have to have these specific set pieces.
Right.
This is what we've already done in previs.
Right.
Can we get a director that can sort of string all that together successfully?
Get that French guy who made that movie my wife loved or whatever, like...
I mean, I'm sure that phrase probably was literally said. Yes.
Hey, all my artsy friends liked his movie at Cannes. Get him. He can make Alien. Well, I love the David Giler, who we've talked about before. Him and Walter Hill were the main producers for the first 3 Alien movies. And he's in the documentary going, we vehemently fought against this. We read Whedon's script and said, this is an abomination. This is not the franchise at all that we've built. And basically he was like, they just were like, yeah, we don't care, was what Fox said. And he goes, they didn't listen to us. He is the last thing of that. He goes, they didn't listen to us, and they got a 4th Alien. It's just like, they got what they wanted, a 4th movie called Alien. I don't know what to tell you. Like, But yeah, so the only two creatives from the original movie were like, don't make this movie. And Fox was like, fuck off.
What other movies did Fox have coming out around this time?
97. It's not a great time to be Fox, I don't think.
Yeah, obviously, like, we're going to have a Fox renaissance in the next, like, couple of years after this film.
Well, they're 2 years out from releasing the Star Wars prequels.
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
very, very, very good time to be Fox.
Between that and the X-Men films that are coming out in like the early 2000s.
Let's take a look here. Once again, all right. Here, actually, we'll do the thing I've been doing. Let's just talk about what was the top box office. Let's see if any of these were Fox movies. Top box office 1997. All right, here, like, because I don't. This is another one that didn't do horribly.
Yeah, so Alien Resurrection has an estimated budget of $75 million, and it made a worldwide gross of 161. By all accounts, a success.
It turned money, but there was definitely. I mean, note they didn't run into. They didn't run into Alien 5. There was definitely a thought of, I think this thing is run out of gas, and they were all, once again. I think we talked about this on 3. They're. If Ridley Scott's talking about wanting to do the origins, Fox is talking about, like, what about Alien versus Predator? They're already sniffing around that idea. And even in the documentary from the time, Sigourney Weaver's going, yeah, I hear they want to do Alien versus Predator, which seems like the stupidest thing I could imagine.
Well, because you have producers pitching it like a Universal Monster Mash movie.
Yeah.
And you know how, like, Hollywood producers are convinced that strategies from the 40s and 50s are perfectly applicable no matter what age we're in.
Oh, yeah, that's still the case. Bad time for Fox, 1997. Here we go. Number one movie of 1990. Any idea, Gergoni, what the number one highest grossing movie of 1997 was?
Number one highest grossing film of 1997.
I'm sure it's a movie. I would be shocked if we both didn't see this as kids.
Yeah. Can you give me a hint?
It's a sci-fi comedy.
Lost in Space?
Ooh. No, that was actually, I believe, the same year. It is Men in Black.
Oh, yes, of course.
Men in Black.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, we were kids. I'm sure you as I was. If you were a kid in 1997, Men in Black was the coolest shit that had ever happened.
Yeah, 100%.
That movie,
he had a tiny gun.
Yeah, that movie
but it was big gun also.
I just remember being like, that was our Ghostbusters. Like, that was the thing where we're just like, oh my god, the merging of comedy and sci-fi. That movie blew me away, and I was all about that movie. And I had the soundtrack, and you know,
I will continually marvel at the fact that Vincent D'Onofrio can convince me that he's a giant bug in a man suit.
I've been on the record many times, legitimately an Oscar-worthy performance. Actually, no joke. That is an incredible performance. The physicality and that makeup, which I think they did actually win the Oscar for makeup, because holy shit. Anyway, number 2, the aforementioned The Lost World, Jurassic Park. Liar Liar,
another sequel rushed out very quickly, and the movie suffered for it.
Yeah, but it did better than this, and it does have a couple of really good sequences in it, a couple of really good set pieces.
Sure.
I still think
the T-Rex going into the waterfall is one of the coolest shots in Jurassic Park.
And I think the last act with the T-Rex in San Diego, pretty fun.
Yeah, not bad.
Liar Liar was number 3. Boy, that takes you back to a time when a studio comedy could make the top 5 of the year, right? That doesn't exist anymore. And that was also like the golden age of Jim Carrey. Oh, I mean, this was when... I mean, Liar Liar must have been one of, if not his highest grossing, but that thing was gigantic once again. Air Force One, one of my favorites. Get Off My Plane. And then Fox's biggest release of the year is number 5, and that is the re-release of Star Wars. Fox's, okay, looking at the top...
Because that was the special edition, right?
That was the special edition, A New Hope special edition. Yeah. That made $138 million. This is just domestic box office, by the way. So, and then... but you were talking about what's Fox got? Well, then you got to scroll all the way down to, so number 5 is a New Hope special edition, and then Fox doesn't show up again until number 22 when it's the special edition of Empire Strikes Back. They
6 months later.
they had fucking nothing this year.
Well, and like Alien Resurrection is a November release. So
Right.
this is squeaking in at the end of the year.
Alien
It's like
Resurrection was the 44th highest grossing movie of the year. Oh, God.
Yeah.
You know what else Fox put out the same year? Speed 2 Cruise Control.
and that outgrossed this film.
Yeah, by a little bit.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oof.
That and the Tommy Lee Jones classic Volcano was another Fox effort this year.
Well, look, I'll go to bat. For
I
Volcano.
also kind of like Volcano, but it's very stupid.
It's very stupid. Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones fights a volcano.
Because there was the plot of that movie, for those who don't remember, was there's a volcano under Los Angeles that we didn't know about. Shit, there's been a volcano here the whole time. I didn't know that.
Whoops.
You're like, I don't think that's possible.
How did we miss this?
Oh, shit, man. We gotta stop this volcano. Talk about dumping a bunch of money on some. You think Tommy Lee Jones fell in love with that script?
Oh, I mean, there's a whole era of Tommy Lee Jones, the late 2000s, that is nothing but Tommy Lee Jones needs a paycheck.
Well, I mean, it's very interesting that we talk about it. He's in the top grossing movie of the year, Men in Black, and then he's also in Volcano.
Yeah. But he was just indiscriminate in his
if
choices,
you needed a cop or military general or something, you know.
What was that movie from like the mid-aughts where he's just like babysitting a bunch of cheerleaders?
Man of the House. He's like a U.S. Marshal or a Texas Ranger, and they witness something, or it is the flimsiest excuse to go, you know, it'd be funny, angry old man and wild party college girls.
Yeah. That's the whole movie. Is hanging on that premise.
I always think it's so interesting that he's such a like grump about stuff like at award shows. Like, dude, you've made some of the dumbest fucking movies. And you're going to be like, I don't find that funny. I cannot say. I mean, it's the what do you say?
I cannot sanction your tomfoolery.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. Well, and by the way, having seen Batman Forever, you get up for some tomfoolery too, Mr. Jones. Okay. Yeah, so
We're so off track.
Yeah. This movie though, it just, like we're talking about, it just doesn't need to exist. This really does feel like, okay, you guys are done. Let's talk. I do want to mention the Leland Orser character. We've talked about pretty much everybody but him. He shows up late in the movie, and he's a guy with an alien in him. And I will say, the whole franchise has been inconsistent about the gestation period of a chest burster, right?
Oh, it's when the script says it happens.
No, because it's crazy. Some people it bursts out almost right away. Other people are, go days.
I mean, Ripley literally spends the entire third movie with one in her chest.
Yeah, and this guy spends a huge amount of time with one a brewing.
It's like less than a few hours though. I can be more forgiving with this film in particular.
That's true, but we've seen people where it's like 20 minutes. It feels like,
Okay. But he is central to like my list of like pedantic nitpicks to this film's logic. Can
and
we
once
go down
again,
my list of pedantic
Leland
nitpicks?
Orser doing a fucking professional job as best he can with what he's been given here.
Yeah, and I actually really like his death scene. I think it's really like cool, gross.
Yeah.
Sci-fi acting.
No, this movie delivers the couple times, because the aforementioned, I do really like Ripley shooting the Xenomorph from underneath. That's cool as hell.
Yeah, no, there's some.
That's
good,
rad.
Like, action
but it's all in isolation. Once again, yeah, the thing where he's got the alien burst out of his chest and they're just blasting away at him. Cool, badass.
Or like he's using his own death to kill this other guy by holding him up against his chest. That's cool.
Rad. I also love the shot when you have all the people in the pods with the alien eggs in front of them.
I have a problem with that.
Okay. Once again, I just like the imagery.
Let's. We haven't talked about the actual plot of this movie at all.
Yeah. All right. I guess. Yeah. Let's get to that because
quick rundown of the plot of this movie. I'm just gonna give you bullet points.
There's not a ton of plot here. I mean, like a lot of these, it basically just turns into run away from the aliens.
Yeah. Vague military-industrial complex in the future clones Ellen Ripley. They fuck up a bunch of times, but get it right on the 8th try. They're doing that so that they can extract the alien queen from her, which for some reason that is never explained, is also transferred in the cloning process. Apparently, the xenomorph entwines itself in the DNA.
Oh, that is so hand-wavy in this movie.
Absolute, total hand-wavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then, in order to experiment further, vague military-industrial complex hires a group of mercenaries to kidnap a bunch of people who are in cryostasis, bring them to this isolated black site ship, and then expose those people to facehuggers so that they can breed more xenomorphs. Okay?
Right.
Obviously, shit goes bad because it's an alien movie.
Yeah. No, that's one of the things I love in the Ebert reviews. He's like, yeah, when you see the aliens, they're behind glass, and because it's an alien movie, they won't stay that way.
Yeah. And then Ripley clone and ragtag group of mercenaries team up to escape, and alien shenanigans ensue.
Yeah. Then it basically just becomes
the plot of the film.
We're going to run around.
And we run around until almost everybody is dead except for Ripley, Winona Ryder's character, who is secretly a robot the whole time. Ron Perlman, because he needs to be there to deliver all the zingers. And
I'm the funny guy in this movie. You can't kill me.
Dominic Pignon's character, who is a paraplegic.
Yeah, who I liked him putting that gun together.
Yeah, I mean, other than just being a plot contrivance, the whole him not being able to walk doesn't, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it.
It's all just it's a long roundabout way to set up the sacrificial death of Gary Dourdan's character,
which makes zero sense given the context.
Yeah.
He's functional enough to pull out a knife and cut himself free, but not functional enough to turn around, grab the ladder, and shake the alien off his boot.
I did think that thing is dead, and even if it died clutching him, because I like the idea of that thing's dead, but it's still on me, so it's weighing me down. But it does seem like he would have been able to get it off of him somehow.
Well, we see him get acid spit in his face.
Yeah, but we also saw that happen to Hicks, and he was okay.
Yeah, and again, he's okay enough that he can pull out a knife.
Also, I'm not sure I like that either. I'm glad you mentioned that. The alien spitting acid as a...
That happened in 3 as well.
Yeah, I don't like that idea, though, because their blood is acid, but also their saliva is acid? Is that the idea?
Well, I think maybe they just bite their tongue and go...
Yeah, I don't know. It just feels a little bit too much of a, feels a little bit too tactical for the alien to me. I don't know. Something. Yeah, it's a weird move. I understand it. I get it. Yeah. Somebody thought that was cool.
So, I mean, that's the plot of the film.
Yeah.
And then there's some extra stuff at the end with the hybrid, who is a result of the alien queen getting some of Ripley's DNA in her.
Yeah. Once again, these are all half thought out ideas, right? They're all hey, there's... Both 3 and 4 suffer from, we have about 40 ideas and we're going to do all of them.
So going back to why I started on this tangent, my problem with the whole sequence in which the kidnapped people are strapped to gurneys with eggs in front of them, it's a cool visual, right?
Yes, yeah. And that they're all unconscious, and then one guy wakes up just as the thing is over. He's like, ah!
Sure.
Fine.
And... yeah. I think that's fine. I think that's cool. I think that is totally a weird, fucked up, corporate move for let's breed us some xenomorphs.
Yeah.
But per the logic of the last film in the franchise, we've now established that you can pop a facehugger on anything.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we need to be kidnapping people?
I mean, fair. just to make them extra evil, right?
But we go out of our way to say this is no longer
operation.
This is now vague but menacing government organization.
who are just equally evil, though.
I guess.
But once again, everything is so ill-defined.
Yeah.
It
I will say the military does exactly what you want to do as soon as the aliens break containment. Like, you expect the dumb military people to go, oh, we got to fight these things and we'll die to the last man trying to beat these things back into containment. No, they're just like, nope, we got to get out of here. This place is dangerous.
By the way, needlessly cool moment for Dan Hedaya when he throws that grenade perfectly. He rolls it with the exact amount of force to go down into the little pod ship.
Yeah, that was a moment of just like conveniently timed CG that I'm just like, okay, it's a cool shot, but like needlessly perfect how it like rolls in.
And I'm just like, they clearly were just psyched about that shot. And it looks fine, but once again, why?
So he can turn around and look surprised when another alien eats his head.
Yeah. Sorry.
We get that
another job
shot of him reaching back and pulling out a piece of his own brain.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
Sure. Dan Hedaya is just happy that he was like, great, I'd go do another 40 movies. But yeah,
again, there's just some like logical inconsistencies in this film that bug me that like smack more of lazy writing.
That's what it feels like. It just feels like nobody on the actors are here to play, but nobody on the production side is particularly. It's just more like, well, we need to make another Alien movie. Why? Because we do. Figure it out. And it sounds like that's a lot of it from Joss Whedon had a singular idea. And then the studio was like, it needs the following things. Figure out how to make that work.
Mm-hmm. It is a product that insists upon itself, and its whole purpose is simply to exist. Not that it necessarily has anything profound to say, even if the kernels of those ideas are present here.
Well, just everything about it. Like we talk about, get the director, because he's a guy who's got some kind of vision, and we can, he's new to the American studio system, so we can probably push him around. Let's be honest, that's also part of why they... And get the guy who writes the lady action movies,
Sure.
It's interesting. I think this is the same year. I think Buffy started in '97, so he's launching Buffy and this movie come out at the same time. Yeah, '97.
The Buffy movie comes out in '94,
'93, '92. Okay. So there's 5 years between, but the big thing that once again is he did uncredited but wrote a considerable amount of the first Speed, and so that made him a big deal at Fox, is why Whedon got this gig too. And he had specifically done a lot, as you would expect, for the Sandra Bullock character in that movie. So they're like, oh, that guy knows how to write ladies. We don't we have a lady franchise?
Yeah, and again, Joss Whedon's very messy and awful relationship with many women in his life is best explained in their own words and not by us. So,
right. And once Joss again, Whedon, none of it directly connects to...
One of nerd culture's secret monster, not connected to this film necessarily.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about it, because I don't think he was really around on this movie, as you would expect.
I doubt it.
When was Waterworld? Because that's also a famous one where I'm trying to see if he was on... That's 95. That was before this, because he was on the set of Waterworld rewriting that movie day to day.
Well, that's because that movie was a complete and total disaster that needed to be rewritten every day.
That was by the way, talk about one of the great documentaries. If you have the Arrow video, which of course I do, of Waterworld, the documentary about the making of Waterworld is riveting stuff. But yeah. All right, do you want to talk about some people's reactions to this movie?
Yeah. I mean, I've got my list of other, like, all of Ron Perlman's quips in this movie.
Yeah.
Depending on the moment, feel as though they're either coming from his character. What's his character's name? I don't know any of the characters' names.
No, that speaks to the thing, right? It's like I said, all the characters are just only interesting because this guy's played by Ron Perlman.
Yeah.
Joner?
Genre.
You know what I like is I watched this movie yesterday, and as I'm reading that doesn't even sound familiar. He was just Ron Perlman
at some point in this movie. Yeah,
I'm sure they say it, but I'm just like, yeah.
But he bounces back and forth with his quippy one-liners between ones that his character would deliver and ones that are just being written by Joss Whedon to be in this movie.
Yeah. It does feel like he just has a list of one-liners to pull out when needed.
Right. Written by the writer.
Yeah.
Like there's that bit, the exchange. I actually like the exchange. It just comes out of fucking nowhere and just is so writery. Is he comes up to Ripley and says, "Oh, I heard you tangled with these things before," or something to that effect. And he asks, "How did you deal with them?" And she says, "Well, I died." Ha ha. Audience laughs.
Did you love
How
their?
does he know that?
Did you love their flirty, sexy basketball game?
Is that what you want to call it? Flirty?
It's played that way, kind of, at least initially.
I mean, Ron Perlman's character in this movie is played as like a sex pest / potential like
maybe
sexual assaulter.
Maybe
like,
this
he's definitely
speaks to
predatory.
Maybe this speaks to the Joss Whedon of it all, but she also is kind of playing it like, oh, you, like I know you're a predator, but I'm also gonna screw with you.
Yeah, I mean, there is that bit later in the movie where she literally out his tongue. So
it's a weird. Yeah, there's just weird stuff. The movie is very like you're right. He is written as a predator, but I'm not sure. Once again, tonally, how much I'm supposed to like worry about him.
I mean, there is a troubling quality in 90s films where a sexual predator can be. The movie portrays them as they're supposed to be endearing about it all.
Because I mean, we're definitely supposed to like him. No question about that, right?
Oh, sure, he's the funny one.
He's the lovable scamp.
Who is threatening ladies with a good time,
right? And what I'm about to say is not excusing that behavior, but the way the movie plays that is like, but they also never have him really do anything. So it's a thing. A lot of movies do this. You bring up, especially 80s and 90s movies, where it's like, yeah, that guy's saying a bunch of predatory stuff, but he'd never really act on it. And we know that, so what a goof.
The character Ron Perlman is like designed to looks like a weird space biker who would definitely do that stuff.
And Ron Perlman can play that. See 8 seasons of Sons of Anarchy. He can be legitimately threatening, of course, because he's also a huge dude with a scary voice. So
the first scene we're introduced to his character is him throwing a knife into a paraplegic man's leg.
Yeah.
Just because he thinks it's funny.
Yeah. And he keeps talking about how he's going to fuck Winona Ryder, even though she's like a little girl, as far as I'm concerned. The presentation of Winona Ryder in this movie is very interesting.
Yeah,
she's both infantilized and sexualized. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Once again, maybe does speak to...
How old is Winona Ryder at this point?
She's got to be in her 20s at this point.
Easy.
Yeah. Because the thing about Winona Ryder, because you were talking about this last week, it's like baby Winona Ryder. Actually, not. It's just Winona Ryder's been in movies since she was like 11. She's 26 in this movie.
Okay. So yeah, there's a weird mix of infantilization and sexualization.
But that's the thing is they play her very young, and then for her to be a robot on top of it all just makes the whole thing really weird.
Yeah, and again, the movie isn't interested in like exploring any of that, so you're just left to stew in like I don't know what to make of this character.
Right. Well, let's talk. Let's see what Jimbo Fletch has to say about this movie, huh?
Oh no, you found my IMDb posting.
This doesn't sound like you, but maybe you surprised me. Titles.
I just like the name Jimbo Fletch.
Yeah. Jimbo Fletch, who titles their review, "Ho Ridley, where art thou?" Parentheses, or even David Fincher.
You're saying that doesn't sound like me?
"Oh Ridley, where art thou?" Making more gladiator films. Okay. Why? I'll ask that question again. Why? Now all in caps. Why was this film ever made? The original Alien is a masterpiece, no doubt. Aliens is the perfect sequel. Alien 3 is flawed but visually inventive, and it makes some interesting developments from the first two films in terms of drama and character. Alien Resurrection is a cash-in. Of course, most sequels are, but this doesn't even attempt to hide the fact that it is one. It feels lazy, hackneyed, tired, and lethargic. Are tired and lethargic the same thing, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just Mr. Thesaurus here. Maybe this is you. There is no tension, not even in the underwater sequence everyone raved about, simply because it was too difficult for the fans to believe that an alien film could be utterly devoid of merit, suspense, or interest. The Ripley character looks bored and is now so outrageously arrogant as to become a cheap parody of her strong female status. Now she is so overwhelmingly macho, it just looks stupid. The other characters are pitifully written. The first 2 Alien films had characters you cared about, and even the third film managed to make some of the victims, tough job considering they were all murderers, sympathetic. But here all they do is make bad jokes and totally dispel any possible tension by spouting ridiculous dialogue. And for a film in which all the characters do is run away, there is no atmosphere of tension or sense of danger. This is due to a lame script and uninvolved direction. The special effects are mostly poor, especially in the end, and is a further testament to the overall badness of CGI. I'm going to break out of the review for a second and say I don't like that sensibility. Once again, I think we've talked about that, and I've talked about it on other shows for sure. Just being like CGI is bad is a dumb statement to me.
Well, because it speaks to a misunderstanding of, like, I don't know, the basic tenets of, like, trying to create special effects in movies, right?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, we went too far with CG because people thought you could accomplish everything with it, right?
Well, it was the new hotness too, right? It was the new toy to play. It happens all the time.
But saying it's inherently bad simply because it exists is flawed.
Right, and it's been used brilliantly by countless filmmakers. And actually, I don't think the effects are that bad here.
There's a couple that, like, pop out to me of just like, ooh, that doesn't, like, the rendering isn't quite there anymore.
Yeah.
See the seams, but it's no worse than, like I said, so many other films of this era.
Well, I was going to say, but for 1997, I think these are probably about as good as they were going to get. And yeah, maybe they were. There's a couple moments, though, where I thought, like, hey, that's pretty good for 97.
Like, he mentions the aliens underwater. I thought that scene still looks pretty good.
It's still the best scene in the movie, no question. Okay, back to the review. There's only one mildly diverting sequence where Ripley sees all of her clones in the laboratory and burns them in a moment of grief. Some attempts of character development, but in retrospect, the sequence just feels throwaway, just a bit of filler between the next inevitable death. It also doesn't help that the emotion of the scene is ruined by the line, "women," by the stereotypically misogynist bonehead played by that moron out of Beauty and the Beast. All right, out of the review. How dare you? How dare you come after Ron Perlman?
I mean, yeah, that's mostly the writing's fault because, again, his line isn't women, it's must be a chick thing. That was a waste of ammo.
That's right. That was a weird scene. We didn't talk about that scene.
Yeah, again, it's like trying to dissect emotions.
Feels like it's out of a different
character.
Feels like it's a different movie, right? Like
a movie that cares more about the, like, internal struggle that Ripley is having with not being Ellen Ripley and simply being a product of this vague menacing government organization.
That's a cool idea for a science fiction movie. This movie does not have the time or interest in actually really exploring that on any kind of level of depth. And if that's what Sigourney Weaver responded to, then I'm sorry she kind of got fooled into being in this with an interesting idea. I disagree with this next paragraph. Once again, I think similar to the Ron Perlman thing, before I read what this guy said, I think this person is blaming the script, or is blaming the actor for a script problem. Okay, here it is. Finally, Winona Ryder is terrible in this. Of course, spoiler, she's a robot, but that's just something defenders of her unexplainable star status say to avoid admitting the fact that she is bad in this. Very bad. Pull out of the review again. I don't think she's good, she's doing what she can with the material she's been given. And Winona Ryder, we know, is a very good actor.
Also, unexplainable star status? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, I can explain it.
Yeah.
She's charming in a lot of movies.
Yeah. She has like a lot of movie stars, she has a very specific, unique quality. and delivery
Totally.
and sense of humor. And yeah, she's been a movie star for like 4 decades now for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
People really like her. Anyway, and yeah, this is far from her finest work, but I think is more to do with the script than she's trying her hardest to bring anything to this character that we went over. Kind of, you can't make sense of in the movie too much, or is just
No, and again, like it went to the point where my brain was making up backstory to make this character make more sense.
Did you get your hands on the novelization? Maybe that's in there.
That might be it.
That I could see. I don't know, but yeah. Okay. Anyway, here let's wrap this up. If Alien 3 was a pale imitation of Alien, albeit not a bad one, then this is a TV movie copy of Aliens. It looks rubbish, has no reason to exist, and completely destroys the credibility of one of the most interesting sci-fi film series ever, for what once was a classic trilogy has now become a franchise. As stupid as Alien vs. Predator seems, it can't be as bad as this. 1 out of 10 stars.
Wow.
I agree with some of that review, but I think is, as always, a little too harsh.
Hyperbole is alive and well in John shall forever be the monster we are trying to slay.
Okay. There's some interesting reactions across the 10-star reviews, because, of course, I don't know anyone who's really, like, vouching for this movie. I think at best, you were talking about being a mild defender of it. You know, you could say it's fun, but the idea of this being like, holy God.
I'm going to go ahead and guess that a lot of the 10 stars reviews for these people saying other people should chill out. This movie's fine.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of just like, so it's not the movie you wanted. Shut up, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
I call those the defiant 10 stars. Those are the ones that like aren't actually reviewing the movie. They're trying to balance some like galactic equation that they see they're having to defend.
Yeah, that happens a lot. Well, let's read this one from C. Dallas. Is that a Fifth Element reference?
I would have to assume so.
Yeah, I would think C. Dallas, yeah. All right, who titles their review, needlessly long title. Although most would view it as an attempt to revive what is called an already dead series, it's actually a great movie with true intrigue and innovation. That's the title of the review.
Oh, I thought we were already into the first
Nope,
paragraph.
that's the title of the review. First off, let me say that I love the Alien series, so please acknowledge that. Here's what I think.
I have acknowledged it.
So acknowledged. The first 2 Alien movies were outstanding. The first is the scariest movie of all time, and the second is the best action film of all time. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, all right, sure. I agree more with the first thing than the second thing, but okay.
John, we don't know. Maybe they've only seen the Alien franchise.
Yeah.
Like, those are the only films they've seen.
I just want to say to this guy, we live in a world where Die Hard exists, but that's okay. Okay. I think the third was okay because it did achieve the dark and creepy feel it was going for, but was also a bit of a disappointment. What I think everyone didn't acknowledge about the film was that it did a damn good job of resurrecting the aliens. Think about it. How else can you make a story that takes place after the third one and still stars Sigourney Weaver? Don't say the third one was a dream because that would be corny and immature. I thought the story was very good. The characters, although slightly wooden, were very well drawn. Some people say that old Ripley was gone, but by the end of the film, she was acting just like the good old gal we all know and love. I love the idea.
Good old gal.
Oh, Ripley, our good old gal. How old is this guy? And something that only one critic acknowledged was this: the newborn alien. Wow! That's all caps and exclamation point. That thing was ugly and scary as hell. That's the type of alien you need for the ending. You've been seeing the same old alien for 3.75 films now. That's actually how they wrote that.
Sure, technically. Sure.
Yeah, And you've pretty much gotten scared by the creatures as much as you could. Why not bring some fresh meat on the scene? And plus, you have to include the alien tradition of battling a new alien at the end of the film. In the first one, Ripley battled a normal alien. In the second one, Ripley battled a queen. And in the third one, Ripley battled a dog alien.
Okay, but no. I'm sorry, but no.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
real tangible difference between the alien in the first movie and the third movie.
No. And it wasn't a dog alien. There was an alien in a dog briefly.
Well, I understand.
Yeah.
Internet, don't come at me. There is a design difference in the actual physics of the how that alien in Alien 3 moves, but in terms of our view of xenomorphs, it ran on walls, it grabbed people, it killed people, it had acid for blood.
It's not the same jump from first movie Alien to Queen Alien in the second one.
Yeah.
Or even to human hybrid in this one. To continue the tradition, Ripley battled a human alien. And if I may say, that thing is the scariest of them all. No. Once again, you liked it more than I did, but I don't think you would say it's the scariest of all of the aliens.
It's messed up and weird looking.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think it is maybe on the trajectory towards what we're getting in Prometheus more than anything else.
Yep.
It's weird to retroactively look back at this film when we consider the way things go through Ridley Scott's next two movies. But I think it is not nearly as iconic as the traditional Xenomorph.
What I don't understand is that everyone says this series ran out of steam by the beginning of the third one. I disagree. The Alien films still have a flare going, but a fifth one would be all that you could have before the flame burns out. I expect the fifth to be really good, but also tie up the entire story and give an accurate epilogue to the series. And think about this. You're not going to resurrect a series like this just so that you can end the series again just before the credits of the said film. Alien Resurrection was a good movie, and I think it was as innovative as a third Alien sequel could be. 10 out of 10 stars.
When was this written?
1999. So pretty much on the heels of this movie.
I'm so sorry, whatever user this is.
See, Dallas?
Also, I didn't know IMDb was that old. But.
Yeah. Oh man, this guy's he's only reviewed 3 movies: Alien Resurrection, Aliens, and Jet Li's Black Mask, which apparently he hated because he called it
wasn't an alien movie.
In my opinion, this is the worst film of all time. Not a single xenomorph in sight.
Maybe I was right. The Alien franchise is the.
I gotta say I haven't seen Black Mask in a long time. I don't remember it being the worst movie ever. I remember thinking it was pretty cool. I mean, it's about as good as any other Jet Li martial arts movie.
Well, look, there was a string of American-made Jet Li movies that were,
Yeah, this wasn't one of those though.
Yeah,
this is a Chinese one. He wears a black mask and kicks a bunch of people. What more do you want?
Yeah.
I guess Xenomorphs maybe was what They didn't innovate the aliens in this one at all.
Man, we have never seen a martial artist try to fight a xenomorph, have we?
Yeah, we haven't gotten that movie. That would be something, man.
Would it?
All I'm saying is you do the classic slow motion thing where it kicks the xenomorph in the face, but then when it spits out the acid blood, which actually happens kind of in this movie when Ripley gets hit and her blood hits the deck and it burns.
Yeah, that's true.
She burns.
I guess, yeah, we've never seen a character in any of the Alien movies attempt to engage a xenomorph in fisticuffs.
Well, because it seems like
that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a bad idea, and I think most people instantly can size that up. That's not going to go well, because they whip that tail around, man.
That's true. Just fight you.
Well, next week on the show, Guriani, what were once two shall become one when the aliens and predators face off. That's right. It's finally time to bring these two franchises together because both of them have lost the trust of the audience. So obviously the answer is make a movie with both of them. It's Alien versus Predator, also known as AVP. And I will say, I'm about to mention the best thing about this movie. It is one of the greatest taglines legitimately in the history of film.
I love the original AVP poster for both the tagline and just the aesthetics of it.
Whoever wins, we lose. Badass. Perfect.
Chef's kiss.
For a brief second, I thought this movie might be good.
Well, and here's my problem going into this movie. We'll talk about more of this extensively next week. Having been like a huge fan of the comic before this movie came out. I was just like, yes, this movie is going to be so cool. It's going to take place in the future, and there's going to be weird space cows, and there's going to be aliens and predators, and the main character is going to earn the respect of the predators, and it's going to be...
Yeah!
Some of that happened.
Yeah. Well, I think I will just say, before we even talk about next week, the second they said it was PG-13, I think everybody's like, oh, well, fuck it. Forget it then. What are you even doing? What are you even doing? I don't understand that decision, because every Predator and Alien movie had been rated R. What were they thinking?
Now it has to be two great tastes that taste great together. We need to make the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup of the Alien and Predator franchises that can be a mass market appeal, so we can finally make that cartoon that we've been sandbagging this whole time.
Also, this will be the first but not the last time on the IP Squad we discuss the work of Paul W.S. Anderson.
Oh boy.
Yeah, strap it. He'll definitely make a very concerted appearance when we get to the video games movie season.
Oh yeah, look, he and his wife just love taking vacations on studio's dime, and
they really do. And you know what? Yeah, hey, they've gotten that thing. Also, head over to our Patreon page, because we're talking about a Paul W.S. Anderson movie on our related cases. Paul W.S. Anderson, director of Event Horizon, the best movie he made, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, to use blank check parlance, that is his guarantor, right?
Yeah, Event Horizon is great. Well, yeah, I mean, I think for us as fans, I think his actual guarantor was Mortal Kombat, which was really successful, actually.
It is always shocking how successful that.
Yeah, that movie was really good. I also have a real soft spot for his movie Soldier too, but with Kurt Russell. But that's me. But anyway, head over. Our Patreon is patreon.com/punchupent. It's punchupent. And like I said, you get not only bonus episodes of this show where we're talking about movies. I'll be generous because Event Horizon is pretty good. Movies inspired by the Alien and/or Predator franchises. I was going to say rip-offs. I think Event Horizon is the most. The other two are definitively rip-offs that we're talking about over there. We're going to be talking about Leviathan, and then we actually had to reach to find what our Predator ripoff is, and it's a TV movie we're watching, which let me remind you, the title is Code Red: The Rubicon Conspiracy. As of this recording, as you're listening to this, the Leviathan episode will be out, but we will next be talking about Code Red: The Rubicon Conspiracy on the Patreon page, so make sure you head over for that.
If you were really missing those bits of one of the Punch Up's older shows, The Action Shelf, in which the hosts were just holding their heads in their hands going, why are we doing this to ourselves?
Yeah.
Strap in for the related cases on this season of the IP Squad.
Yeah. I enjoy Leviathan. It's an incredibly stupid movie, but what if Alien but underwater? Yeah.
Hey, at least they actually had a name for that, as opposed to the other movie that's exactly that, just called Underwater.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love when movies are like that, because it's also like, I too just title things so I can write them, but then try to come with a title. Some movies just come out like that.
Train. Plane.
Yeah.
Boat.
Well, Boat is coming out, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the sequel to Plane, Boat, is actually in production right now. So,
I am aware, and that's why
I can't wait for Boat.
Another way you can support us is over on our
YouTube channel. It's
youtube.com/@punchupentertainment. You can find all of our shows there as well. Your best second screen experience is over on youtube.com/@punchupentertainment. While you're there, please subscribe, comment below. Let us know what's your favorite ripoffs of the Alien and Predator franchises, because there's so many of them out there.
But I will say, and that's why we're doing the TV movie. The Alien ones tend to be better, or at least more legitimate movies.
Some of them.
That's why I say tend, because we had to kind of reach for a Predator one.
Yeah, we did.
Or are we talking about it in the case of something like Pitch Black that actually started as an Alien movie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
like,
anyway.
There were easier choices for the Alien film to be a related case. We'll say that much.
Oh, yeah. But I think that's going to wrap things up. Until next week, the case file. It's closed.